On this episode of Hoosier Adventures, we check out Madison, Indiana. Madison is home to Indiana's largest historic district. Basically, the entire downtown of Madison is a historic district. And this is the main street, but all of the main street and the side streets are lined with very cool historic buildings. As a result of this, Madison is a great town to explore on foot. I would describe it as it's just big enough to get lost in, but just small enough that you don't need to move your car when you want to go somewhere else. What you're actually seeing at the end of the shot here is called the Broadway Fountain, and if it looks familiar, it's made by the same people that made the famous fountain in Cincinnati, and that's actually what this plaque says right here. We're going to get a better look at this amazing fountain here. One of the cool things about this fountain was just how clean the water looked. I mean, it looked clean enough that you could actually drink out of it, though I wouldn't recommend it, especially not during the COVID-19 pandemic. And one of the really cool things about Madison is it feels much larger than it is. So as you're exploring downtown Madison, it feels like a big city, and I think a lot of that has to do with its older buildings. I mean, this is kind of like the old historic district of a much larger town, akin to something like Louisville or Cincinnati. However, it's in the town of Madison, which is not very big population-wise. One of the really cool things about downtown Madison is you're going to see a lot of different buildings with different architecture styles, but for me the most interesting is probably the colonial architecture. Even though a lot of these buildings that have colonial architecture were built in the early 1800s, which is after America gained its independence, they're still just great time capsules that you don't see in this part of the country very often. I could have spent all day wandering around Madison looking at the different houses. They're all so unique and they're all so well kept. There's actually a large historic house we're actually looking at the grasslands for, but the thing that interests me here at this intersection where these two houses are across the street from each other, they're very, very different and very unique. So this blue house here is actually very, very small. It looks much bigger on camera than it is, but it's so well kept and so nice. And across the street is a completely different style of architecture, and it's a mansion. We visited Madison on Monday afternoon during the COVID-19 pandemic. So some of the stuff was closed, including this restaurant that we wanted to eat here, the Broadway Tavern. It's quite famous, and the inside of it we were able to see through the windows looks really cool. It's an old historic building. Unfortunately, we weren't able to eat there because it was closed. But you've got to save something for next time, right? Something that really impressed me about Madison was just how well kept it was. It was very clean. It seemed like a great place to raise a family. This is a cool building. I don't know what to call it. It's sort of like the public community center or something, but they have public restrooms that anyone can use, and inside are some brochures, and you can get some information on attractions in the area. It's a great use for this former filling station. As I said earlier in the video, it's not just the main thoroughfares of Madison that have great historic houses. You've got to go down all the side streets and check out because there are some real cool hidden gems. Now, this is the restaurant we actually did end up eating at that day. It was great. I had the hamburger. I highly recommend the hamburger. And here's a shot of the inside. As far as interesting places to shop go in Madison, it's filled with antique stores. So if you are interested in antique stores, you can shop to your heart's content. There's also a bookstore, and there are several coffee shops as well as a few ice cream shops, I believe. This is the county courthouse. To me, it's most famous. It caught on fire about a decade ago. It was all over the news. And here we see a future employee of the month. Now, I stood here for a little while, got footage of him on my GoPro here, as well as took a few pictures with my cell phone camera. And I had to check his breathing, but don't worry, he was definitely alive. He was just down for his nap. I had to get some footage of this old house. You'll notice it doesn't seem very wide, at least on this street, but when you go to the side of the house, it goes back really far. You have these really cool porches. But one of the coolest things about this house is actually on the side of the street here. And I believe that's an old coach step. So when people would pull up in their coaches, that was there so that they didn't have such a far drop. I really wonder if that thing is original or not. Here you'll see an old train station, which is on the west side of town. There's also an accompanying history museum. However, it was not open that day. I'm not sure if it just isn't open on Mondays generally or if it was closed because of the pandemic. Despite the museum being closed, I was still able to get some footage of this caboose here. They just have this railroad caboose. I'm sure there's kind of a cool story behind it if you get to go into the museum. I don't know anything about it. If you know anything about it, I'd appreciate knowing, so put it in the comments, but I was able to get some footage of it. It's really cool. Along with being on the Ohio River, Madison has a Indiana State Park very close to it. Here you'll see some footage of the inside of Clifty Falls State Park Lodge. Clifty Falls State Park has all kinds of hiking trails as well as several different waterfalls, and that's where it gets its name. I was not as impressed with this lodge as I was with some of the other lodges in the Indiana State Park system. However, the great thing about this lodge is it has an amazing view, and you can actually get rooms here at this lodge that overlook the Ohio River. Of course, one of the things you'll notice about this view are these large towers from this power plant. I look at that and I immediately think they would never let them build that today, but here it stands. And this is looking back towards downtown where we were earlier in the video. So you can't see it really well because it's mostly tree covered, but that's a shot of downtown Madison along with the Ohio River next to it. Oftentimes during summer, they actually show movies out here at the lodge. And now let's check out some of the natural wonders of this state park. Clifty Falls State Park is home to several waterfalls. Now, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe this is actually called Tunnel Falls. And where it gets its name is there's a tunnel that we're going to get some footage of later on here in the video. Now, we didn't have a lot of time to explore a lot of these trails, but there are miles and miles of trails that go all through the state park, as well as several different waterfalls that are all worth seeing in their own right. There's also a swimming pool, as well as a few different campgrounds, depending on what you're interested in. And I must say, despite the fact that the COVID-19 pandemic was in full swing while we were here, the park was very crowded. Something you may not be able to tell on camera is that over on the right side here, as I'm walking straight, there's a large drop-off of about 60 feet. So you don't want to fall. And here we come to the tunnel. Now, I didn't bring any flashlight with me, and I actually didn't have even my cell phone there, so I didn't have the light from the cell phone. This is a tunnel. It looks like a cave. You can't see light at the other end of it, but believe it or not, it actually is a tunnel. I ended up not going through it. I hope you enjoyed this look at Madison, and I hope you like, comment, and subscribe, and be on the lookout for more episodes of Hoosier Adventures.